Welcome to Full Metal Jackass. With the third and final Transformers film due out soon, I thought it would be a good time to look at the first two. What they did right, what they did wrong, what they did so very, completely, and hilariously wrong. But before delving into the movies themselves, I'd like to take a look at the series as a whole, the Bay aesthetic, and the world that's been laid out so far. The Transformers fandom is a pretty protective bunch, and when a new branch to the franchise is announced, there's always some people shouting, "Oh god, Transformers is ruined forever!" But it seems like whenever a new Transformers movie is in the making, there's a lot more pissing and moaning about each tidbit revealed than normal. Which is probably to be expected, since of all the forms the series has taken, live action took a long time to get tried outside of a few kinda creepy puppets and toy commercials. But not only were they pushing Transformers into a format it hadn't done before, they were also creating a brand new look and attitude to go along with it. The Bayverse school of robot design steers away from the traditional smooth lines and obvious vehicle traces in robot mode in favor of a more complex, arguably more organic look. I actually rather like the idea, as breaking up the panel lines creates the appearance of many layers of armor and machinery, which leads to some impressive looking designs. However, using a real-world color palette on computer-generated robots with similar proportions, stocky and ape-like, leads to the common complaint that, well, everyone looks pretty much alike at a glance, and glancing is basically all you can do during the fight sequences. But we'll get to the direction later. The thing is, the reason that was given for the busy, insect-like designs and lack of normal faces and humanoid features was that they were intended to look more realistic and give the look of alien robots. Emphasis on the alien. There really is no reason that creatures from another planet should have 2 arms, 2 legs, and 1 head like we're used to, and doubly so for a race that's made up of living metal rather than carbon-based. But it is sort of what we're expecting, going into something Transformers related. They did make an attempt to give the heroic Autobots more recognizably human-like faces, and the evil Decepticons have more insect-like faces, mandibles, compound eyes, and other distancing factors. The Cons also have more totally non-humanoid members like Scorponok, Ravage, and Laserbeak slated to appear in the third. This does help tell the sides apart a bit, although there's a far easier way, because Decepticons are the ones that just jump out, go BLAH! And get killed by an Autobot for the most part. Another thing I'd like to point out is how they also went in intending not to resort to mass shifting, or, to those unfamiliar, how the hell does a 50-foot robot turn into a handgun? Of course, that ended up being a tall order they had to give up on pretty soon. But it shows in the weird flattened design for Starscream, because in spite of jets being pretty massive, in spite of what the old cartoons imply, they didn't want them to tower over the main characters. So basically where I stand on the Bayverse aesthetic is it makes for interesting contemporary sci-fi monster design, and I can see what they're going for, but it doesn't tickle me quite like some more conventional designs. They look more like GM licensed takes on the xenomorph from Aliens than, well, Transformers. And as for the fiction itself, though, say what you will along the lines of it's a cartoon movie, it's for kids, it's a popcorn flick. There's not really much excuse for the funk of ruined potential that clings to these movies. In the weeks leading up to the release of the first, I was in full-on, full-metal fanboy mode. I bought figures, I bought the games, then I pretty promptly sold the console version because it was slag. The comics and expanded universe stuff also panned out pretty alright. In fact, I even liked the movie. Then I went home and slept on it, and as time passed, more and more flaws opened up like badly stitched wounds, like I'd been drugged and tossed into a blood sport arena, then stitched up half-assedly before the happy juice wore off. It was a movie about giant robots beating each other up, directed by someone who cut his teeth on the flash of music videos, and made his name by blowing things up. How could things have gone so awry? What is the Transformers je ne sais quoi that the films missed the boat on? I was watching the movie on TV with a newbie to the franchise the other day, and they put it pretty well. I mean, I may not be a Transformers fan, but if I'm going to watch Transformers, I want to see Transformers. The whole thing about Transformer fiction is that they're not just robots, they're sentient beings. In other words, they're characters. Shallow as they may be, they have voices, motivations, mannerisms, and interactions with one another. In the games and comics, which chiefly focus on the robots themselves, there are some power struggles and conflicts going on, giving their fights a little more context. In the films, which follow the humans for the most part, they're just chatty props for Shia LaBeouf to run from or be saved by during flashy set pieces. There aren't really any moments that show any of the Autobots, save Bumblebee, have any sort of attachment or connection to their human comrades. other than some kind of obligation to keep them from getting killed in their own fight. Though, given the cast of characters we're given, can you blame them? They're all pretty much annoying, hollow caricatures, or worse yet, completely pointless throwaways. They say that these stories need a human element for us to better relate to the story and the fantastical goings-on, which is basically the same argument used for every comic book and video game movie adaptation out there. They want to make something for fans palatable to the general audience, which leads to arbitrary changes and dumbing downs. This bugs the crap out of me, not as a purist of this kind of thing so much, but because it's completely unnecessary. Follow me here. Most comic book movies follow what? The hero's origin. That means that you're getting into the story from the very beginning and already don't need to worry about people who haven't been following decades of built-up plot development. From there, telling the story and presenting all the weirdness therein should be pretty easy to cover, seeing as how the characters themselves are experiencing it all themselves alongside the audience. Basically, you have your framework, you have the blessing of the creators, just take what's there and maybe add or subtract material for clarification's sake, and make an attempt not to make the art design completely horrible and unrecognizable. The Transformers movies were starting over with a clean slate, a chance to tell an entertaining little sci-fi yarn and hook new fans. Hell, it isn't like the Generation 1 universe was a masterwork, or all the Transformer reboots were horrible, so hey, maybe the live-action franchise could provide a strong narrative. So this is where the weak and the strong part ways. Stay tuned for part 2 when we get to work on the movies themselves. And no, we're not planning to go to the third one on opening night. Full Metal Jackass, over and out.